Thanks friends for stopping back by the channel, and you're probably asking yourself the same question that I've been asking myself also. How could a guy purchase a gun back in January and not get around to shooting it until November? Well, that's the same question I keep asking myself over and over again. But if you visited this channel before, you will see that I keep myself busy making wads for black powder shooters, and if you're looking for a source, please feel free to drop by our Etsy store, Lane Beaver Trading Company, and I'll drop a link down below to that store. And also I produce in large quantities powder measures. So that's my excuse for not getting around to shooting the revolver until now. I do kind of want to share a little bit of my experience. It wasn't as good as one had hoped. First of all, like most of you, we concern ourselves with cap jams when it comes to these revolvers. And most of us will readily recognize that a quick fix to this issue is slick shot nipples. I'm not going to do any close-ups, but I will tell you that I replaced the nipples or the cones on my 1860 Army with slick shots. And when I did that, the card right in the front reads, "Use number 10 Remington caps only." Well, I purchased a set of slick shot nipples for this revolver, and the camera should be able to pick it up. You can see them right there. This is what the card now reads: for use with Remington number 10, CCI number 11, or RWS 1075 caps only. Well, I do have an ample supply of the RWS 1075 caps. Now, like most of you, I do the same thing. You put the caps on the cones and you cycle it and let the caps burn out any residual oil that might be in the cone. When I did that, I immediately recognized that I was going to have problems with at least two of these slick shot cones, because I had to really force it onto the cone. In fact, on two of them I had to use a dowel, and even with that, on those two cones I could not get them to sit flat and properly, which caused a problem jamming up right here as I spun the cylinder. They were binding up right here. So obviously I had problems with the cones. I did manage to get everything loaded properly and fired the first 6, and I'm going to show you that target now, even though at the end of the video you're going to see the targets being printed with the round ball. But for a close-up on this, I have the targets here, and I'm going to show, if the camera can pick them up, where the two obvious flyers were. This one here was shot number 1, right at the top. Now, as you can tell, it's right in direct line with the bullseye, and now all of my aiming was down right here at the bottom of the bullseye, anticipating and knowing that these revolvers do shoot high. This particular day I was at 16 yards, 48 feet, if I did the math correctly. And then the next 3 shots were here, I believe. I'm trying to go off memory now. Like I said, I do have the shooting video at the end, and all I have is just a close-up of the targets. This flyer over here I can explain because shooting this revolver, I had to change my routine, the way I load. When I load up my 44s, either my Remington or my Colt, I use a loading press. Okay, I made this myself, I can load both the Colt and my Remington, and I do load my cylinders off the gun. So that kind of threw me off just a little bit, and for those of you that may ask, where did I get this? I built this myself. I do not have a lathe. All I did was chuck my variable speed drill in a vise with dial calipers and micrometers, and I was able to make everything work out, but this is only for my 44s. So that last embarrassing shot right here is because I had changed my routine. I forgot to put powder in the cylinder. Yeah, laugh along with me. So once I recognized that I had a wad in a ball and no powder, I had to go to plan 13B, which was to take the cone off, pack the cylinder with powder from the back end, and put the cone back on and fire it, and that's this shot right here. And now I did load all 6, and as we can count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I do not know where one of the shots went. That was my first target. Recognizing that I was going to have further problems with the slick shots, I went into my house and I got number 10 CCI. Now I also recognize that the cards with the slick shots do not recommend or say anything about CCI number 10. But I went ahead and reloaded, and I actually had a problem with all 6 cones at that time. And more pronounced was the 2 cones that I originally had problems with, the 1075s, and it ended up being the same issue. They were not seating the proper depth, and they were binding up and crimping right here. So because I had that in my mind, trying to work out what the issues could be, I forgot to hit record on target number 2, which is what I'm about to show you now. Now, target number 2, I decided to go ahead and bump the grain charge up to 25 grains of 3F instead of the 20 on the original cylinder. And this is what I ended up with. The camera can see it really shot low at that time, and this is how the target was sitting on the backstop. So I did not record this, but this is what I achieved with the second load with 25 grains of 3F GoX and the number 10 CCI percussion caps. It's embarrassing, to say the very least. So what I did is I went back to the house. Now keep in mind, my shooting berm, my shooting range is within 100 yards of my house. So I went and I got my container of CCI number 11s, which is what the second package suggests you can use, CCI number 11s. So I loaded the revolver back up. This time I went back to my 20 grain charge, and yes, I had the same problem with those 2 cones with the CCI number 11s as I originally had with the 1075s. The other 4 cones, the caps went on the nipples very easily, if I worded that correctly. But anyhow, as you will see, and I will point out here once again, and when you look at the shooting video, this little dot right here is penciled in. What I did is when I reloaded it with the 20 grains of black powder, my shots ended up over here. Even though they're in pretty much a straight line, they ended up far to the right. And once again, my aiming point was right here, and I was using a rest. I was not shooting these offhand. I was using a rest. So I elected to charge the cylinders with 15 grains of 3F, and my aiming point was here, and most of those ended up right over here. I decided not to use this as an aiming point because I wanted to see if I could pull my point of aim or the point of impact closer to the bullseye with 15 grains. And once again, I'm not impressed with this, but at the same time, I do recognize when it comes to any black powder gun, you really want to run about 100 rounds through it before you really start, trying to make changes with the revolver itself. With all of that being said, I will tell you and show you what I have done with the revolver when I got it new. Knowing that the revolver was going to shoot high, and it is unloaded at, you can see it's unloaded. It's been safety checked, obviously. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but I actually squared off the bottom of the V and I went a little deeper with it. Now I did that before I did any of my shooting, and as you can see, some of them went high, some of them went low, especially when I got the 25 grain charge in there. But I also opened up the V for my eyes so I can get a clearer picture of the front sight. And having lined everything up dead center, I now realize that I'm going to have to make my aim, my front sight, favor the left side of the hammer. So in the next video, I'm going to have to my next shooting day, I'm going to have to consciously try to remember, which I will have no problem doing, keeping my sight to the left side of the hammer. Now what I've also done to the front sight, and once again I know the camera can't pick it up completely, but typically we all know how these front sights go in the Colts. They're round and then they drop straight down. Well, what I favor in doing is taking a file and beveling about a 25-degree bevel at the top of the sight. Once I do that, I have a very shiny spot. And then I take a Sharpie or something and I color in everything below that, so that when I aim, I can see the entire front sight in the rear sight as it sits flat, instead of trying to guess where the sight or the bead really needs to be. So at my next range day, hopefully it won't be several months, hopefully it'll be within a few weeks. We have some terrible wind coming here in New Mexico in the next 3 or 4 days, so that's not going to happen until possibly the weekend. And I will tell you what I did to resolve the issue with the slick shots. On the two that caused the most problem, running my fingernail, and those of you that are familiar with the slick shots, there's opposing holes, opposite holes. There's a hole on one side and a hole on the other side. Well, on the back side, where the drill punched through, on those two cones, there was burrs left, and the cap couldn't get pushed past the burr. So I filed those burrs off, and I went through all of them just to make sure at that point. And the CCI number 11s fit really good. The 1075 caps fit really good, except for those two cones, except for the original two causing the problem. So I then began to take my fingernail and run it across the upper lip, and sure enough, both of those cones had a lip there also. Just to answer the question now, no, I do not dry fire these guns. So it had to have come, in my very strong opinion, from whoever machined these didn't take the time to clean them up. But that being said, Once I filed the edge down and could no longer feel the lip and the upper end of the cone, I went ahead and tried to reset the 1075 cap. Still would not go on. So at that point, I obviously had to file down into the cone itself. Obviously, it come off the machine without the precise size it needed for the number 10 caps. Once I did that to the two cones, then my 1075 fit without any obstruction or anything. They just went right on. And like most of you friends, it's always a good idea to take some sort of dowel and just go ahead and push the cap on. I will tell you friends, at this point, I do make my own caps. I have invested into the Primal percussion cap dies, the little hand dies that you can use at home. And I have fit those on these cones and they fit very well. I also do make my own black powder, and I've been making my own black powder for maybe 3 years now, and I do instruct at Mountain Man Rendezvous how to make your own black powder. I have not shot any of that yet except through my Remington. I will be doing some videos on that black powder, the homemade black powder, sometime in the future. But for now, I have plenty of powder to be shooting through these guns that I wish to get burnt up first. So anyhow, that's enough of the monologuing. I hope you enjoy the shooting video. It's not much. I had to edit out the frustration of the empty cylinder, but that's full disclosure. I have no excuse, and I really have no excuses to why it took so damn long to get to shooting this revolver in the first place. Other than also, I've been shooting these guns since I was 18 years old. My first black powder revolver I purchased is when I was 18. I'm 60 years old now, and I have had pretty much a lifetime of shooting these revolvers. I've built numerous kits. I don't do that anymore, so I kind of have a good general feel of what to expect, what not to expect, and resolving some of the issues that do come along with these revolvers. And I do have to say, for a guy that was shooting these when they weren't all that popular, I am happy to see the resurgence for these revolvers come back to life. It's no longer a strange thing to go to the gun range and see someone else having a black powder gun, and I'm glad to see YouTube having multiple videos, and I am happy to see the resurgence into these firearms. They are fun to shoot, but make no mistake about it, they're also deadly. One other thing before I close, I kind of forgot in my monologuing here, I did recover some of the round ball, and I am using a .380, and I know the camera cannot pick it up, but looking at the round ball, I can identify that I have very good land to groove engagement, and it's a very long engagement, and that's kind of what everybody was expecting by going to a .380 round ball instead of the .375, the .376. And I will also mention something else here, is that upon cleaning the revolver, I noticed that the cone itself was very narrow going to the rifling. So what I've done after I cleaned, I got myself an 11-degree taper on a cone, and I took some sandpaper and I very lightly opened the cone so that it's more of a cone going to the rifling instead of pretty much a straight angle. I don't know that that's going to really change the impact point, but I do know that it's going to make it a little easier for the ball to get to the rifling as it's being swayed through a little wider cone than it is something that was almost straight. So anyhow, we'll see how that does next range day. And once again, thanks for stopping by. I plan on doing a whole lot more. Now that winter's coming along here, I'll have a little bit more time, because all of the work that I do in making the wads and the powder measures, I tend to do all of that during the summer months, all my forging, because I do forge knives and strikers, so I tend to try to get all of that done during the summer months when it's nice. During the winter months, I have some indoor stuff, but I also try to do a lot of shooting during the winter months. So please stay tuned for all of that, and once again, thanks for stopping by, and we'll catch up with you later. Bye. Okay, now